having pancytopenia and the urine sample of this patient. Okay, yeah. How many urine samples we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's number here. So you have total 5 urine samples collected from the same patient at different times. See, the first urine sample is at 7 a.m., 9 a.m., 12 noon, 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. So you have urine sample of the same patient which is collected at different times, and to your surprise all the samples are not looking alike. Anything strange how you noticed? The first 3 samples are somewhat red to brown in color. So the only reason what you know about red to brown colored urine is hematuria. Means there is hematuria in the 3 samples, more in the early morning sample. So what does that indicate? There is hemolysis which is happening in the body, and this hemoglobinuria is more in the first urine sample. Means when might the hemolysis happen? In the night. So nighttime hemolysis generally happens in only one anemia, as what you know is PNH. PNH is paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria. So paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria is a anemia wherein which the hemolysis happens more during night time, because the complement is more active during night time. So what he is asking is which is false. Investigation of choice is flow cytometry. True or false? Yes. The gold standard investigation of choice of PNH is flow cytometry. This is true. It can transform into acute leukemia. Yeah, this is one of the questions which you are not sure about. Yeah. A long-standing PNH can transform into aplastic anemia or can even transform into acute leukemia. So this is also true. And patients of PNH will be having thrombocytopenia, but for our surprise, these patients also have the risk of increase in thrombosis, that too particularly in the abdominal vein, that too particularly in the hepatic vein. So this is called Buchieri syndrome. So abdominal vein thrombosis also is seen. Next is acquired disease. So PNH sounds like, or the pathogenesis make you, it's quite deceiving, as if you feel like it is an inherited disease. It is not an inherited disease. It is because of, we have discussed in the earlier MCQs, it is an acquired mutation in PIGA gene which is responsible for synthesis of an anchoring protein GPA. So this is because of an acquired mutation. So this is also true. Okay. So all 4 statements are true in this question. So let's make it inherited. Let's make it inherited. Sorry for this. I included all right options. So let's make it inherited. Now, what is the false statement about this? So this is a false statement. Okay. So this should be an acquired disease. So this is not an inherited disease. Okay. Fine. Let's move on to the next image oriented MCQ. So villain in this disease, you need to remember the villain of specific diseases. Villain in the sense, there are some group of diseases or particularly hemolytic anemias where hemolysis happens specifically in an organ. Say for example, in thalassemia. In thalassemia, there is immature RBCs will be destroyed in the bone marrow itself. So thalassemia, the villain will be bone marrow. Similarly, in ITP, immune thrombocytopenic purpura, all the platelets will be destroyed in the spleen. So the villain will be spleen. So what is the peripheral smear finding before going into the organ where destruction happens in this case? See, what you are looking at is there are RBCs which are not having any central pallor. See, this is a RBC which is having a central pallor. But rest all RBCs in the peripheral smear are not having central pallor, which is characteristic of spirocyte. So which is characteristic of spirocyte. So villain in disease means what is the villain in hereditary spirocytosis? So the villain in hereditary spirocytosis is spleen, because these spherical RBCs try to traverse through the narrowest blood vessels which are located in the spleen. So in this attempt, they get destroyed in the spleen. So there will be massive splenomegaly in cases of hereditary spherocytosis. The reason why one of the treatment options for hereditary spherocytosis is also a elective splenectomy. So what is the villain in this disease? It is spleen, because it is a case of hereditary spherocytosis. Spirocytes, though are seen in hereditary spherocytosis, they can also be seen in autoimmune hemolytic anemia. How to distinguish the spirocytes seen in autoimmune hemolytic anemia and the spirocytes seen in hereditary spherocytosis? Generally, the spirocytes seen in hereditary spherocytosis are microspirocytes, and all the spirocytes will be of the same size. But those spirocytes which you come across in autoimmune hemolytic anemia, they will be spirocytes of different sizes. And another differentiating feature between spirocytes in autoimmune hemolytic anemia and spirocytes in hereditary spherocytosis is hereditary spherocytosis you doesn't come across positive Coombs, whereas autoimmune hemolytic anemia, as it will be having autoantibody, it will be giving positive Coombs test. Okay, yeah. Now let's move on to the next image oriented MCQ. Krukenberg tumor of ovary. So this you might be going through in your general pathology chapter, neoplasia, and also female genital tract. So Krukenberg tumor of ovary is always bilateral. It is a rule. Krukenberg tumor of ovary, never it can be unilateral. All cases of Krukenberg must be bilateral, means both the ovaries must be involved. And second unique feature of Krukenberg is the ovary, though it is having a metastatic deposits, the capsule or the outer surface of the ovary remains intact. Okay, so what is very important about Krukenberg is the unique feature is the capsule or the ovarian outlines are well preserved. And third important feature in Krukenberg is microscopy of Krukenberg will be showing signet ring cells. Microscopy of Krukenberg will be showing signet ring cell. And another important point and very interesting thing is 95 to 97% of Krukenberg are metastatic. So it's not all Krukenbergs. 95 to 97% of the Krukenbergs are metastatic, and mostly the metastasis may be from stomach, or it can also be from other abdominal organs. So most of the cases, or almost all cases, are metastatic. A very less proportion of Krukenberg may be primary, means even in the absence of a second malignant lesion, you can also come across bilateral Krukenberg. So almost always it is metastatic, but very rarely, in less number of cases, it can occur as a primary malignant neoplasm of the ovaries. Now see the statements. Always bilateral is true. Ovarian outline is preserved. So 1 and 2 both are true is the correct answer. Now let's go for the next question. False about fibrolamellar variant of HCC. So HCC fibrolamellar variant. Let's look into the details. Alpha fetoprotein is a marker. This is a false statement. Alpha, so you have two types of hepatocellular carcinomas. One is classical, second one is fibrolamellar variant. For classical variant, the tumor marker is alpha fetoprotein, but for fibrolamellar variant, generally alpha fetoprotein is negative. Neurotensin is the marker of fibrolamellar variant of hepatocellular carcinoma. And classical hepatocellular carcinoma is always seen in patients with pre-existing cirrhosis or pre-existing lung disease, but fibrolamellar variant is one of the malignancy which is seen in a normal liver. So this statement is true. And obviously, as it is seen in a non-cirrhotic liver, this will be of comparatively good prognosis. As it is seen in a non-cirrhotic liver, this is also more common in non-alcoholics, and this is more common in young adults, and Classical hepatocellular carcinoma is more common in males than females, but this variant of fibrolamellar variant of hepatocellular carcinoma is equally common in male and female. So 3 statements are true, only 1 statement is false, that is alpha fetoprotein is not a marker of fibrolamellar variant of hepatocellular carcinoma, but alpha fetoprotein is the marker of classical variant of hepatocellular carcinoma. And another interesting thing is alpha fetoprotein apart from classical variant of hepatocellular carcinoma can also be a marker of yolk sac tumor or endodermal sinus tumor. Now let's move on to the next question. Hepatization is seen in cirrhosis of liver. So hepatization is also a misnomer. Hepatization has nothing to do with a liver disease. So it is not seen in cirrhosis. It is not seen in alcoholic hepatitis. It is seen in pneumonia of lung. So pneumonia of lung, you have 4 phases. One is congestion. Second one is red hepatization. Third one is grey hepatization. Fourth one is resolution. So what are the 4 stages? Red hepatization, congestion, red hepatization, grey hepatization, resolution. Why it is called as hepatization? The lung, which should be spongy, in these diseases, because of the exudate, it becomes solid and has a consistency of the liver. So such a pneumonic lung which is having a liver like consistency is called as hepatization. It has nothing to do with Alzheimer's. So what is the answer? Pneumonia of lung. Next question. Malignant Stratton tumor. Okay. So malignant Stratton tumor is, remember, malignant Stratton tumor is a mesenchymal malignancy of nerve sheath origin which can differentiate into another type of malignant mesenchymal tumor. Okay, I'll go into the further details. So it should be a malignant tumor of nerve origin or nerve sheath origin. So what should be the initial tumor? A malignant nerve sheath, means only one tumor has been named, so that is called MPNST. What is the full form of MPNST? Malignant peripheral nerve sheath tumor. So what is the full name? Malignant peripheral nerve sheath tumor. This is a malignancy which is arising from nerve sheath. Along with this tumor, if you come across malignant skeletal tumor of mesenchymal origin, that is called malignant Stratton tumor. So along with this, if you have a malignant skeletal muscle tumor, it is called malignant or rhabdomyosarcoma. Rhabdomyosarcoma. So easiest way of remembering is, what is malignant Stratton tumor? MPNST with rhabdomyosarcoma. So what is this? Malignant peripheral nerve sheath tumor with rhabdomyosarcoma. See, MPNST with rhabdomyoblastic. So this is the answer. Let's see the next question. Trilateral retinoblastoma. What is trilateral retinoblastoma? Retinoblastoma of both eyes with a pinealoblastoma. Okay, with pineal gland involvement. With pineal gland involvement and bilateral retinoblastomas are called trilateral retinoblastoma. Krukenberg of both ovary with primary is not malignant Stratton. One single primary tumor with 2 secondary deposits is also not malignant Stratton tumor. So what is malignant Stratton tumor? MPNST, malignant peripheral nerve sheath tumor with rhabdomyoblastic differentiation or rhabdomyosarcoma is seen in the same tumor. Okay, fine. Next, let's move for the next question. What is the CNS tumor associated with Charcot? So Charcot we have seen earlier while discussing about adenomatous polyps. While discussing about adenomatous polyps. What are all the adenomatous polyps? Familial adenomatous polyposis, Gardner syndrome, Turcot syndrome. So these are the syndromes which are associated with neoplastic polyps or adenomatous polyps, which on long standing transforms into adenocarcinoma. The CNS tumor which is associated with Turcot. So Turcot has an association with two types of tumors. One is astrocytoma and or medulloblastoma. So what are the two tumors associated with Turcot? Yeah, the answer is A, medulloblastoma. It is not oligodendroglioma, it is not choroid plexus papilloma, it is not meningioma. So what is the tumor? Medulloblastoma. What is the other tumor? Astrocytoma. Okay, fine. Next question. False about granulomatous thyroiditis. The reason for asking this question is most of the students get misguided, or the word granulomatous will be so conceiving that it is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So this is not the routine caseous granulomatous lesion we have seen in tuberculosis. It is somewhat different. The name will be deceiving. So let's see about granulomatous thyroiditis. Let's have a look at the other names. This will be discussed in more detail in surgery. So granulomatous thyroiditis, also called subacute thyroiditis, also called giant cell thyroiditis, also called de Quervain thyroiditis. De Quervain's thyroiditis. The most common cause of this is a preceding viral respiratory infection. It is not and never caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Very important. So granulomatous thyroiditis or subacute thyroiditis or giant cell thyroiditis or de Quervain's thyroiditis is caused by a preceding viral infection, not by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And this will be a painful symmetrical thyromegaly, and which is self-limiting, which will be self-limiting. It doesn't cause any residual damage to the thyroid. It is self-limiting. Now let's look at the options. False about granulomatous thyroiditis. It is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It is false because it is caused by viral infections. Multinucleate giant cells are seen on microscopy. The reason why it is also called giant cell thyroiditis. Self-limiting with no residual hormonopathy. True. Only one thyroiditis will be having residual hormonopathy, which is Hashimoto's thyroiditis, in which the person will be having lifelong hypothyroidism. Commonly seen in females also is true. Now let's move on to the next question. Civetti bodies are seen in. Civetti bodies are nothing but apoptotic basal keratinocytes seen in the epidermis in lichen planus. Okay. So what are Civetti bodies? These are apoptotic keratinocytes seen in the basal layer in patients of lichen planus. So the answer is lichen planus. So lupus vulgaris is cutaneous tuberculosis. Pemphigus vulgaris and bullous pemphigoid or bullous lesions of the skin. In one case you have pemphigus, you have intraepidermal bullae. Pemphigoid you have subepidermal bullae. Okay, fine. So Civetti bodies are apoptotic keratinocytes seen in the basal layer of epidermis in cases of lichen planus. See the image. So what you are looking at, the entire thickness is the epidermis. What you are looking at, the entire thing is epidermis. So what is happening here? See, there is a eosinophilic dead keratinocyte, another eosinophilic dead keratinocyte, another large eosinophilic dead keratinocyte. So this is called Civetti body. and all the basal cells will undergo vacuolar degeneration. Complete basal, stratum basal will be completely lost. And another characteristic feature is there is intense, dense, band-like lymphocytic infiltrates. What is characteristic? Intense, dense, band-like lymphocytic infiltrates in the superficial dermis. And there will be some separation of epidermis with the dermis, formation of clefts. These are called Max-Joseph clefts. So what are these called? Max-Joseph clefts. So with this we are done with this question. Let's move on to the next question. Yeah, not a feature of Hashimoto's thyroiditis. As I told you earlier, Hashimoto's thyroiditis is another type of thyroiditis which has residual hormonopathy, the person having a lifelong hypothyroidism. So Hürthle cells. So Hürthle cells are characteristic and also called as Hürthle cells also called as oncocytes, which are seen in Hashimoto's, though can also be seen in some other diseases. These cells are seen in Hashimoto's thyroiditis. As it is an autoimmune disease, you come across proliferation of multiple B and T lymphocytes. So you have lymphoid follicles seen in the histology. So what are seen in the histology of Hashimoto's thyroiditis? You have lymphoid follicles seen, and a long-standing Hashimoto's thyroiditis can transform into malt lymphoma. Any autoimmune disease has a risk of transforming into malt lymphoma. And infectious etiology. So this is wrong because Hashimoto's thyroiditis is a autoimmune disease. It is a autoimmune disease. It has nothing to do with the infectious etiology. Has nothing to do with the infectious etiology. So this is the wrong statement. So the answer is D. Okay. Yes. Let's have a look at the microscopy. So what you're looking at, this larger thing is a lymphoid follicle, and what you're looking at, these are the normal follicles. In between, these are the follicles which are destroyed and degenerated. So destroyed and degenerated epithelial cells are called Hürthle cells. So these are the Hürthle cells which are very clear on higher magnification. Hürthle cell also called as oncocyte because of its eosinophilic granular cytoplasm. The reason for eosinophilic granular cytoplasm is these cells are studded with multiple small mitochondria all over the cytoplasm, which gives a eosinophilic granular appearance of the cytoplasm. Okay. Yes.